Today marks the 54th version of Waste of the Week. 54 times I've been down here in the Senate to highlight documented examples of waste, fraud, and abuse. And when I first started this endeavor, I was told my staff, I hope we can reach $100 billion or so, some target. Do you think there is that much waste, fraud, and abuse floating around here through the federal government? Well, we hit that $100 billion a long time ago. And we now, I think about the 20th week, and we now have moved to a pretty staggering number, which is more than a third of $1 trillion of waste that has been documented by independent agencies of the government and supporting us with information as to why this money should not have been spent or how it was wasted or lost through fraud or abuse. Now today, and I've had a number of serious issues here that run into the billions and billions of dollars that easily could be fixed. Some of them we've started by pointing this out with legislation to try to fix these things, but it just keeps piling on here. And so every once in a while I throw in something so ridiculous people will understand the fact that there may have been some benefit to that program. We don't understand what the benefit was, but surely these ridiculous examples of money spent, taxpayer, hard-earned tax money spent, is not used for this purpose. Tell me it's not true. Unfortunately, it is true. And so today I'm adding two more examples of something where people say, how can this be possible? And the total ends up to about another $1.5 million. One of the studies was funded by grants from the National Science Foundation, totaling $1.3 million. The researchers' application stated they would use the grant funds to examine a variety of factors, one of which was how does humidity affect the heat that we feel? So, if you go to Florida and it's 90 degrees, you've got to shower 3 times a day and you're sweating and it feels like it's 110, but the temperature says 90. If you go to Arizona and it's 90 degrees, you don't have to take a shower at all because you can go out and take a run, but it's so dry you don't feel that heat that you would feel in Florida. I have the same situation in Indiana. Northern Indiana is up near the Great Lakes, and it's much cooler, fresher, lower humidity than southern Indiana, which lies down along the Ohio River. And so the same temperature down in southern Indiana as northern Indiana, people really feel that it's different. So I think we all know this. We've all experienced this through summers, through dry days, and through humid days. But no, National Science Foundation said, we need a grant. We need a study, and let's give a grant for someone who has made an application, $1.3 million, to see if we can prove that humidity makes it feel like it's a lot harder. So what they did, here's what they did. Folks, I can't make this up. This is true. Their initial study was they took beer cans and koozies. You know what koozies are? Koozies are those things that you wrap around a cold bottle of Coca-Cola or a cold bottle of beer or a can of this or that and so forth and so on in order to kind of keep them cold or keep the temperature inside. They wrapped that up. They put these beer cans, koozies around to see if that was successful in moderating the humidity or what it would do to it. The researchers' initial round of testing was done in a basement bathroom where researchers adjusted the temperature and humidity with turning on the hot water shower and a space heater. Now you think, okay, NSF gave us $1.3 million to try to put a study together. You'd think they'd go to some kind of lab and get sophisticated equipment and so forth. Instead, they went down into the basement bathroom, shut the door, turned on the shower, hot water, and that wasn't enough, so they put a space heater in there to heat it up. And guess what? The koozies worked. Well, when you go buy a product, this winter, Christmas time, everybody's going to go out and buy stuff. companies, look, they test something that they want to sell, and if they think it's going to be bought by the American people, they're successful. Do we have to provide a government grant to help determine whether or not this works? Can't we just go to the company and say, hey, you developed this, what were your studies, what did you learn? Anyway, $1.3 million. I think we have here a photo of, oh yeah, here it is. Here essentially was what $1.3 million bought. They got a little something to measure with here, and they put a can over this, looks like Gatorade or some kind of Powerade or whatever. And I suppose the money went to buy some of this equipment here to test that. But does the taxpayer have to do this? Is it $1.3 million of money taken from taxpayers' paychecks? Is that what it's used for? Well, I guess this is great news for beverage drinkers, but it's mind-boggling that we spend that kind of money. Now, the second thing I would like to highlight here is another study, this one by DARPA. DARPA is the Federal Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. For over 50 years, and I admire this agency, but it's done a lot of good things. This little-known agency states that it is held to a singular and enduring mission. That's on their literature. Make pivotal investments in breakthrough technologies for national security purposes. That's a needed, essential use of federal dollars to make sure that our warfighters have the kind of equipment and have the kind of research backing up what they're doing. So that's a legitimate expenditure. But then why did DARPA decide that the understanding as to why coffee sometimes spills when you're walking is a matter of national security? Now, maybe the coffee's hot and it gets on the soldier's hands or whatever, the presiding officer has had military experience. I'm not sure, as someone in command, you would authorize the study to see if you were moving when you had a cup of coffee in your hand, that you were more likely to spill the coffee than you were if you were standing still. Trust me, folks, this is what this study was all about. And they concluded, here was the conclusion of the study. To prevent a spill, you need to pay attention to your coffee while you're walking, because the movement might result in a spill. Now, a confession here. On my way to work, I drive in from Virginia. I have to go by a bakery shop on Lee Highway, and I flip in there every morning. It's become a habit now, gotten to know the people, for a donut and a cup of coffee. But I don't want to waste time in terms of getting to work, so I jump into the car and eat the donut and drink the coffee while I'm trying to deal with traffic in Washington, get over the bridges, and get to work. I have noticed over time that if I have to put the brakes on a little hard, or start a little fast, or make a quick turn, my coffee slurps out of the cup. And so all they would have had to do was buy my coffee, and I could have proved to them that movement would require liquid to move also. And if you're worried about coffee spilling out of the cup, I could have proven that if all they would have to do is buy me a donut and a cup of coffee. So where does all this come down? Where this all comes down in serious nature is the fact that we are nearly $20 trillion in debt. We cannot balance our budget. We spend more every year than what we take in. And we have to go out and borrow that money, on which we now then have to pay interest. And by the way, interest rates are going up. And when you're in this kind of a fiscal situation, can we not at least, as a body, stop this waste, fraud, and abuse and these stupid expenditures and ridiculous expenditures of taxpayer money? So this is just a drop in the bucket here. We've got much bigger things to do to save the taxpayers' dollars. But at the very least, could we not address these waste, abuse, and fraud that is taking place. I've offered legislation in a number of ways to do that. I know the majority leader is moving to the floor here, and I need to wrap up, and so I will. And so after the end of 54 times down here on the Senate floor, we have a total of $351,587,239,536 of documented, certified waste, fraud, and abuse. And we wonder why the American people are fed up with the status quo of what is happening here in Washington. Madam President, with that, I yield the floor.